Hi, I'm Kimberly Rivers with the Ojai Valley News, and thank you so much to Michelle Pineiro, who is running for Ojai Mayor, and she's agreed to sit down for an interview today. Today's interview with Michelle will be about 15 minutes at her request, and Grant's going to give us a heads up when we're wrapping up. I want our listeners to know that when I reference something in my questions about something Michelle said, it's referencing last week's written responses in the Ojai Valley News, where both candidates responded to the same questions. And so today's questions have not been provided in advance. So Michelle, if anything's unclear, feel free to let me know and to clarify the question. And so I'm gonna dive right in. So you had mentioned that preserving the legacy of Ojai's small town uniqueness was important. Why is that so important?
Thank you so much, Kimberly, and thank you to the Ojai Valley News for continuing this tradition. It's always a real pleasure to be able to speak directly to the voters, so thank you very much. I think there's just a history of preserving the small town uniqueness. When we go all the way back to the 60s, for example, Caltrans proposed a highway that would have ran east-west through the town, and the town rallied, and then that didn't happen. And the Lake Casitas watershed, which is where our drinking water depends on, there was a proposed site for 10,000 single family homes that threatened our area, and with petitions to Congress and through City Council, that was banned around the lake. So I think there's just a long-standing tradition of outside forces that are coming to impose things on Ojai, and the citizens and the government really rising up and through grassroots efforts, preserving what it is that keeps this small town unique into our traditions and love for open spaces and land. So I'd like to continue in that tradition.
Okay, and so along with that, what are some pressures that you see today on that uniqueness of Ojai?
I think development is a real big one. In my campaign, my priorities are really to prioritize the people that live and work here in Ojai. I think there are special interests and a select few people that really stand to profit from our small town. There has also been pressure from the state legislature to consolidate wealth in the hands of a few people. And so it's really important that when we do decide to build, for example, that we do so through the lens of sustainability and making sure that it's the highest quality for the people that live and work here. So with housing, for example, making sure that it is for real working people, for retired, for young people that are entering the workforce, and just, and making sure that anything that is built here is also built in consideration to our water resources, and making sure that we actually have enough water allocated to those projects. So just basically, I think development is probably the biggest thing that we're facing.
Okay. And sort of you touched on this just now, but so you had mentioned that Ojai's falling short in housing for low-income earners and retirees. So going forward, how can Ojai ensure that there's enough housing for those residents that you mentioned, kind of while preserving that small town feel that you referred to?
Right. I think the most, it's multiple things, but I think the first thing is really making it a priority to protect the people that are already in their houses. There's so many people that are just really, on the edge, and they're struggling to really survive day to day. In 2022, the City Council passed a rent stabilization ordinance, which I was in favor of and I spoke for, in support of, which grants those that are currently renting greater protections than the state actually allows, and also gives a housing relocation fee, a home relocation fee. So I would continue to champion the things that actually keep people in their homes. And I think also, any new development that comes to the table, I think unless it's for people that are truly real working class people that are, real working people, not the people that are fall into the state mandated affordable housing, as well as retired and people that are entering the workforce. So strengthening those protections that are currently in place. Did I answer that question? I'm wondering if I could.
I think so. I mean, I just maybe like the question was kind of ensuring that those groups, you kind of touched on that, the low income earners and retirees have enough housing while balancing the small town feel, right? There's this tension in Ojai because we want to provide housing for those folks, but then there's, do we have enough space or where does that go? So,
I think, well, the other thing to, we have met our state regional housing needs. It was 53 units. We have 153 that are in the pipeline right now. So I think it's important to reconsider that those, and we should be really proud that that we're meeting those requirements and that those projects are in the pipeline. But I think we need to consider now that those 153 units that are in the pipeline are going to be going within 4 square miles. I do think that there's room still to negotiate, and this is where I think the job of the mayor and city council comes in, to negotiate that those units that are being proposed in the pipeline go to those in the low and the acutely low category of income wage earners. So just really, and that, that along with ensuring tenant protections and, continuing to support rent stabilization efforts also preserves that small town character and diversity, economic diversity and just general diversity in our town that we're at risk of losing.
Okay. And so shifting gears a little bit, you had mentioned that you've been involved in local grassroots organizing. What are some of those local campaigns that you've been involved with?
Yeah, so I worked on, when I was a campaign director at a national nonprofit, the main job at that level was really helping small communities advocate for themselves. So, for example, there was a community in Seattle that wanted to pass an ordinance, a local ordinance in a small town, to divert organic waste from the landfill. And so we helped kind of those communities organize, and what ended up coming of that was in 2015 the entire city banned organic waste from being put into landfills. So those are some ways that the organization worked there. There was also a community in Oakland that it was a very marginalized community that was cash strapped but had lots of it was a community of mostly retired folks and young folks, and so they had surplus of time, some people, and so what they ended up doing was creating a time bank in that community. So figuring out different ways that local currency can work. So for example, someone would offer babysitting skills, and then in return they would they would get their car worked on by someone that was a local mechanic. So really helping communities advocate for themselves is where my strength lays. And then I also worked on a congressional campaign in 2014, so I have lots of experience in navigating kind of the political channels and bringing diverse stakeholders to the table and creating a large scale kind of problem solving that really draws from different points of views.
Okay, great. And so if you were elected as the mayor holding the gavel, how would you manage disagreements among council members, perhaps between council members, and then between council members and the public? We've seen some of that in some meetings and things. How would you manage that holding the gavel?
Yes. I think, first of all, first week in office, I think we need a code of ethics. I would print that out and everybody would have to sign it as soon as they come in. And then I think there's really something to putting your signature on a paper and saying, I read through this, I agree to it, I know what the rules are. I think it really helps with accountability. I would be standing outside greeting people. I think also just that personal one-to-one, interaction just helps humanize people a little bit.
To even avoid some of those. Is that like where you're going? Okay.
Just to even avoid some of that, and to think, so that we establish that connection of I'm not only your mayor, I'm actually a part of your community. I'm a mother here. I patron your business. Just things that help foster that human connection.
Yeah.
So fostering that one-on-one connection, making people commit and holding them accountable to a code of ethics that they have read through and agree to. And within council, we're not unique in these issues. Many people have faced them across the country, and there's so many different ways. There's one really great way that in Seattle, I reference Seattle because I've just worked with a lot of community organizers there in my past, but they have this World Cafe approach to things. So for example, if you're talking about the unhoused, they would have a kind of breakout session where they tackle that issue, that they'll have staff and specialists in that area and community members. And you break out into small groups with each of these knowledge experts, and you would listen, and you would then switch after about 5 or 10 minutes after listening to that small group. And what comes out of that is allowing participants to really explore multiple viewpoints and then come to maybe consensus, hopefully, but at least then you hear from different points of view. I also would like to have a civility task force. And
what is that?
I know, a civility a civility. Well, okay, so it's two pronged. So a civility task force would be composed of community members, business leaders, government officials, and they would study how to improve public discourse, and then you would develop strategies for how to implement those. So I think just having diverse stakeholders in our community help draw up those methods. I'd also, on council, if I were mayor, I would have a civility champion. And so that would be a rotating position amongst council members, and that person's role would be to maintain decorum through the meeting, helping keep each other accountable. And I think if we also rotate that, we'll each have an opportunity to model the behavior and also enforce that behavior amongst our colleagues.
Okay, all right. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so you had said that public safety is your top issue and that the city should have a preparedness plan. So kind of thinking along that, how can Ojai better prepare for disasters? And I wanted you to touch on, you mentioned a resiliency hub.
Yeah.
That idea. Describe kind of what that is.
I think, one of the first things I would do is a lot of people don't actually know what to do in the case of an emergency. I heard that the Thomas fire was just, it was complete chaos, and people were turning to Facebook for, how it is that they, where the fires are breaking out or what to do or who to go to. So I think the first thing would be to create a welcome packet for people. So as soon as they move into a home or they're new renters, they get a packet that tells them their safety, I'm blanking on the word, their safety hub. So it's Nordoff and the golf course.
Evacuation center.
The safety evacuation center. A lot of people don't actually know what that is. So just, letting them know, here are the numbers, this is where you need to go in case of an emergency, making sure that everybody is signed up for the Ventura County alerts in case of an emergency. Sorry, could you repeat your question?
Well, just so, how can Ojai, so in the context of thinking about Ojai getting a preparedness plan, how can Ojai better prepare for disasters? Yeah. And then I just wanted you to talk about what is a resiliency hub.
Right. A resiliency hub is, so the idea behind that is making sure that every block has like a point person, and then so making sure that those people know what that emergency evacuation plan is, someone that you can turn to that would have all that information, and then liaising with the city in order to make sure that those point people have that information. So that's what I mean by resiliency hubs. But I think there's also just, things that people, I watched Steve Bennett's climate roundtable that he did in the county, and there's just so many things that I think we can better empower our community to do on a personal level. And also on the city level, there's fire management assistant grants that we could be applying for that are going to be coming up. There's building resilient infrastructure and communities grants that are coming up, and then just helping residents better prepare for fire. So retrofitting for resilience, multi-pane windows, fire resistant siding, and then creating that defensible space, the first 5 feet in our homes that can protect from spot fires. But when I talk about public safety, it goes beyond even the emergency preparedness, because that is a huge factor, but there's just also things in our day-to-day lives, like making sure that our crosswalks are properly properly visible, making sure that, pedestrians are safe on our streets. And, to that end, I mean, there's so much that we can talk about, but, I know e-bikes is like a big thing around here. And I think part of that is that we haven't invested in enough recreation opportunities for our youth. I think about, maybe creating a pump track for youth so that they can go somewhere safely to get out that energy and, show off what it is that they can do that's not exactly on Ojai Avenue that's threatening public safety. So there's so much that's just involved in safety beyond fire, beyond preparedness for emergencies, and I'd love to further elaborate on those on my website as well in case people are interested.
Okay.
Right, you have 15 minutes.
Okay. Can I ask one more question and then do your wrap up that you wanted to? So you had referenced in your responses that you would be an advocate for families. So how would you do that?
I think the first thing, like I said, is recreation for our youth. I think, across the board, parents are telling me they're going to Ventura, the kids are going to Ventura. I would love to create more opportunities for our youth to recreate here. I'd love to revisit opening up a public pool. That's something that I think is really needed. I've had kids tell me, they would love a pump track here. I know that was something that was proposed and during the through the Ojai Rec Department. I would like to revisit something like that. When I looked at our, our budget, I mean, there's just so little that's actually advocated for our kids. There was a proposed, I think, splash pad at Sarasate Park. That got totally deferred. I would like to revisit something like that for our kids. And, I think I think the youth recreation could really be upped. And then with regards to communicating with our school board, I think that can be better facilitated. And, as a parent that's kind of navigating those channels currently, I just think that I have a better foundation to kind of address those issues and to really be on top of it because I'm actually invested and I'm going through it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. And so if you had a closing statement that you wanted to share.
I'm so humbled and honored to call Ojai my forever home. This is a place that I deeply, deeply care about. I care about its long-term sustainability, its viability, its health, and raising my daughter here. It's really deeply personal for me. When I look at what can be done, it's not just about the near term. I'm really looking at the long term and the kind of town that we're going to leave our children to inherit here. I have both the heart and I have the experience to lead this community. I think that we need some bold and fresh perspectives that to infuse our city council with and our community with, and to really galvanize us all and rally around things that we all really care about. I know that as a community that we have the ability to really come together and do some amazing things. I'm dedicated to doing things that are going to make a real difference in people's everyday lives, and I just want to be really clear that my priority is the people that live and work in Ojai. So a vote for me is a vote for our future, and I really hope to be able to speak to as many people as possible and earn their votes. And thank you so much.
Wonderful. And so folks can get more information at your website address, which is
MichelleForOjai.com.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you
so much, Michelle.
Thank you.